Big update video here for Stormgate. We have previously looked at some of the new art that's coming. There's been another big development update dropping here. I'm going to play this video. We're going to watch it together, and I'll be giving you guys my thoughts.
There, this is Tim Campbell, and I'd like to welcome you to the Stormgate Early Access 0.3 update. This is a huge update for us, full of improvements to controls, visuals, and overall quality of life. So let's dive right in. First up, I'm excited to showcase Stormgate's brand new lighting model. After getting a lot of feedback from players, we have revamped our in-game lighting system to create a darker, less saturated backdrop for your epic battles. The terrain textures on our ground have also been updated to take advantage of this new lighting. In particular, you'll notice improved exposure values for both the highlights and shadows, especially at night. Our ground terrain has also gained some improved detail with enhanced specular highlights, which help to showcase our experimental time of day system that features both a moving sun and moon. We developed...
I gotta say, just looking at the two different lighting systems, I do like the new one a lot more. Most of the maps that I played games on in Stormgate were on this map that we're looking at right now, this kind of woodland area map. And it did almost feel like, now that I'm looking at the two different lighting systems, they had, it felt like the first version, it was almost like you had grocery store lights on. You know what I'm saying? Like you could just, things are like almost too lit up and illuminated, where I think this makes for kind of more of a darker feel. Whenever I play an RTS game, I always feel like I'm nested and kind of hidden somewhere in the map. You know, it's all about kind of exploring and getting out there and you know, discovering what the terrain looks like and where the opportunities are on the map. And I like the lighting system a lot. Also, it's interesting that they're going to have this day and night feature. I'm curious if this is going to have any kind of gameplay impacts or not.
This feature because a changing light has a way of eliciting emotion. It brings new life to our environments, helping us to create a much more immersive experience for you, and will be featured heavily in our upcoming campaign revamp. Currently, the new time of day treatment is available in our co-op mode on Infested Crater, as well as in our custom game list on a day-night variation of Titan's Causeway. Along with that, a custom variant of our Isle of Dread map has been hit by a severe tropical storm, helping to explain how the island got its original name. Please let us know if you think these lighting and environmental effects are ready to be used on more of our maps. We've also gone even further with our visual improvements in this update, including a visual effects pass across most of the game, with an especially heavy focus on our Versus mode. Our main goal for this pass was to add a layer of polish and to improve the overall visual quality of our combat. But we also kept our eyes focused on improving battlefield clarity by using faster impacts and adjusting the height, opacity, and size of our VFX wherever it would help legibility. Let's check out some of our latest visual effects upgrades. We poured extra fuel on our explosions, such as unit and structure deaths.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think there's no reason to not have structures that are killed. Put some drama in there. You know, make it rewarding for the player and everything. Yeah, I mean, that looks quite good.
More detail, bigger bangs. Many effects also have been leveled up, receiving additional polish like dynamic light flashes, heat distortion, and they even dissipate more gracefully when they end. Many of our projectiles now also leave subtle trails behind. The Flayed Dragon has grown larger, with a more intimidating look. New Infernal construction teases an upcoming style update for the faction that you'll see more of in the near future. Collection arrays now visibly mined, more effectively with proper prism support, of course. There are even new attack and movement UI pings, along with updated Luminite and Therium art. With so many new visual updates, War in Stormgate has never looked better. War is even sounding better too. After hearing a lot of feedback about sound, we completed a mixing pass on volume levels and concurrency across the entire game. This means that battles should be more audible with less disparities in the volume levels of different units and abilities.
Out of all the critiques I had for the game when they did their launch, the audio was the most distracting thing for me. I never I mentioned this in a previous video, I think, before when I talked about Stormgate, but I never really appreciated how much of an audio experience in RTS is until you don't have audio that's balanced and kind of matches the feel. Is like so much of even just knowing what's going on is is happening in my ears. I've always been blown away by anybody that is going to that plays StarCraft with the sound off. I don't know if you know people like this. I've met a couple people that will just play with no sound, and I'm like, you're crazy. So yeah, I haven't heard this audio yet, but I remember the audio probably being the worst part of the game. It was so poorly balanced that you would have these huge battles that would happen, and like one unit would have loud gunshots, but the other one, when its weapon would hit the other unit, it wouldn't make a real sound. And it was almost like disorienting when I was trying to play. So they really needed that. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to come out.
There is still a lot of work to do in this area, but we're making progress. We've also added new sound effects for the Animancer's reworked Dark Prophecy ability and for the Flayed Dragon. Next up, let's talk about quality of life. I am really pleased to share that a long-requested feature has finally arrived, per command hotkeys, or otherwise known as fully customizable hotkeys.
So this was a major issue. Myself included, when I play an RTS game now I came from Brood War, obviously, where you couldn't change the hotkeys. And I didn't know what to think about StarCraft 2 having customizable hotkeys. I remember having like some arguments with my friends about this when the game was coming out, or even having multiple building selection. But once it came out and I was able to kind of make the custom hotkeys the way that it made sense for me and my brain and what I was trying to do, it was very helpful. And I think a lot of players didn't even want to start trying to figure it out if they can't at least make it match StarCraft 2 or whatever RTS game they're coming from, and kind of build a hotkey setup on top of that. So the fact that you didn't have customizable hotkeys meant that you had to like basically rewire your brain and macro and micro with inputs that might not be natural to you. I think some players are better than others with that, by the way. I've changed my hotkey setup a couple times, so I'm a little bit more comfortable with this, but a lot of people just get turned off. But this is basically a must-have if you're going to have pro players come sit down and play. If you're going to have people that have been playing StarCraft every day for hours and hours, and they're going to switch into Stormgate, it's kind of like giving someone who plays a piano a guitar and says, why don't you try this? And you go, this is not the same instrument. Like, just because I'm a musician doesn't mean that I can switch into this and do it. Maybe you could learn faster than the average person because of your background, but being able to have hotkeys customized in a way that makes sense and kind of matches your play style is really important.
This feature allows you to now be able to assign hotkeys based on individual commands instead of just based on grid position. This is completely independent for...
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was the issue, is it was grid position, I think. But people can get really crazy with their hotkey layouts. And that's what was most important, is I think there was an underestimation from the company of how wacky people get with what button does what when you start to really control it. Yeah.
Each faction and each game mode, so you have a ton of control. Automated control groups are now completely customizable too. You can now decide for yourself which control groups units are automatically assigned to whenever they're trained. For example, you could set frontline troops to number 3, ranged units to number 4, and flyers to number 5 for an easy and reliable way to select them.
Okay, I didn't even know they were going to have that. That's interesting. I wonder if I'll end up using that or not. I might be too old school. I might just be used to kind of regrouping.
Or you could assign your transports to their own dedicated group for a better drop harass game. You could even assign the deployed and undeployed versions of units to different control groups if that helps you to optimize your play. As part of this, we also reworked how the Select All Army button works. If that sounds scary to you, don't panic. I think you'll really like what we came up with. By default, Army units are now automatically assigned to Control Group 10, which is selectable using spacebar. This is essentially the same behavior as an all-army hotkey, with one clear difference. Now you can steal units out of it. This makes it much easier to send a group out on their own side mission without accidentally selecting them 3 seconds later with that all-army key again. We've all been there. The traditional select all-army hotkey still exists though, and you can rebind that back to spacebar if you absolutely must cling to the old ways.
You must cling to the old ways. I've always had kind of mixed feelings about inputs and stuff like that in games. I do think the grab all units hotkey in StarCraft 2 was one of it. All these designs always come with the idea that this is going to be really good for new players. And what I have personally experienced when I try to teach people, or I watch people try to learn, is that these are the things that make people actually not learn the game because they become too reliant on it. Like, almost never in StarCraft 2 do you want your entire army moving at once. And very often you need to have stuff separated. The players that are like, I would say right at about the, like what we could say average level of play, a lot of times the issue is they don't have things spread out on, 5 or 6 different hotkeys, and so everything starts to move together. So they just always die to drops. They always die to counterattacks. That being said, I guess players are going to want this kind of stuff, and you might as well just build this in. There's been a lot of big changes in the way that games are controlled lately, especially the older ones. Street Fighter 6 specifically input modern play, and so there was no longer like piano roll inputs. Everything's basically a fireball input. Well, not just that, actually. Modern play, you can just hit a button to do a fireball now, excuse me, and then a bunch of other stuff. And then they like added more HP. I don't know. I mean, but basically all these companies are trying to figure out, okay, when you have really complicated games, what other tools can you give them and whatnot? So I think this is cool. Anyways, I'm kind of on a tangent here.
On top of that, we've also added alternate hotkeys. A hotkey to steal and add to control group, a hotkey to remove from control group, a hotkey to cycle the quick macro tabs, and a hotkey to cycle HQs, which is a great way to quickly jump around to all of your bases.
That's funny because we use F2, F3, F4 in StarCraft for that. But I guess it would make sense to just have that default hotkey. You don't have to learn to try to do that.
Previously, our flying units had the same movement behavior as ground units, which looked and felt especially clunky for flyers as groups of aircraft tried to pathfind around each other midair. Now flyers move with flocking flight behavior. Say that 10 times fast. This allows them to pass through and to overlap each other while moving around, and it feels much nicer to control. There are a lot of nuances to this system. For example, overlapping flying units will naturally separate over time while moving, and when stationary, they spread out even more rapidly. Also, before attacking, flyers will first spread out to help mitigate extremely clumped up focus firing. Now, when units change directions, they look a lot more natural. Instead of turning with a fixed rotation rate, units' rotation rate will quickly slow as they approach their forward direction, contributing to an overall smoother look.
Sorry, wait, I gotta listen to that again.
Move around the battlefield.
My brain couldn't do that. Hold on, let me see this one more time.
Now, when units change directions, they look a lot more natural. Instead of turning with a fixed rotation rate, units' rotation rate will quickly slow as they approach their forward direction, contributing to an overall smoother look for units as they move around the battlefield.
Okay.
Projectile movement behavior has been improved behind the scenes. Arcing projectiles like the Atlas and Mortardon now have more natural arcs, and their projectiles will reach a higher apex in order to cover longer distances. Unit launching abilities like Heroic Leap, Vulcan Dash, Meteor Slam will look more natural as well. A match start countdown has been added for non-campaign games. Games can additionally be paused in any mode, with multiplayer matches allowing up to 3 pauses per player.
Yeah, that's a
AoE
good quality
abilities
of life fix.
now highlight affected friendly units in green and enemy units in red as a targeting preview before being cast. More detailed error messages have also been added to provide clearer feedback so you know when abilities can or cannot work and what the reason is for that. The post-game screen for Versus games has also been completely redesigned. It now displays detailed stats, graphs, and even kudos that highlight key achievements from your match. Additionally, Twitch streams can now be featured in-game in the Stormgate client. Keep your eyes peeled for an upcoming tournament on March 1st and 2nd, benefiting the Children's Hospital of Orange County. You can also support Chalk with this huggable Battlefield buddy. Proceeds from this in-game pet will be donated to Children's Hospital of Orange County to advance pediatric care and cutting-edge research. While watching replays, you can now swap vision between players to see what they were seeing as they played the game.
Yeah, this was another quality of life thing. I think when you get RTS people, hotkeys and complex replay features are really important. Because there's so much to learn and to try to pick up that you really need those tools. I almost can't believe I ever got anywhere in StarCraft 1 at all before replays. Because I was playing before replays. And it's like sometimes someone would do something and it's like a mystery. Like, how do you do that? Or is he cheating? I don't know, But that's going to be good because just kind of seeing who can see what and do what is going to be very important.
Available as an observer, but that feature will be added soon in an upcoming update. Our team has really poured their hearts and their effort into this update to make it as special for you as possible, and I hope you really enjoy it. Looking ahead, our team is full speed ahead on both a campaign revamp and our factions effort. The campaign revamp is a sweeping overhaul of our campaign, including new missions and updated layouts. We've rewritten scripts, we're re-recording dialogue, and we're basically putting a bunch of little improvements in as well to make the campaign experience as fun and as exciting for you to experience as possible. For factions, we're adding new units to each faction, we're changing up some of the core systems that underpin each of them, we're changing the tech trees, and we're basically adding a bunch of changes to double down on what's most fun about each faction, and that would help accentuate their unique identity on the battlefield. So I just want to say thank you very much. We couldn't do what we're doing without you. We still have a long road ahead with many more improvements.
I think the final part he said here, I'm going to play this part again here.
We're changing up some of the core systems that underpin each of them. We're changing the tech trees, and we're basically adding a bunch of changes to double down on what's most fun about.
Yeah, I think that right now, like the features that they're putting in the game, this is all good. It's looking better, and they can keep making it look better and better. The lighting's being fixed. They can fix that more and more. The map editor, I'm sure, is being improved. Dialogue, all that can be fixed, right? But for me with Stormgate, I think I want the races to, like what I like about StarCraft, and whenever I think about StarCraft, I have to go back to being a kid, and I think about how I would sit at the lunch table with my friends, and we would talk about StarCraft races and the units we liked and what we thought we could do. This is like pre AOL, or at least in my house and with my friends. I wasn't playing online yet. I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 months after the game came out, we finally got internet. But kind of this sense of wonder, and each unit was so exciting. A DT it's always cloaked. A lurker, it's like it could attack while burrowed underground. There was kind of this incredible thing they did with each unit that made your imagination go wild. It did it for me as a kid, and it stayed with me as an adult, as somebody who played competitively. And I had the same experience with StarCraft 2. There's a couple units in both StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 that are basic. A Dragoon is basic. A Roach is pretty basic. I guess it can burrow and move underground later, but you get what I'm saying. But, seeing Stalkers that could blink, seeing what they did with the Adept, which was, a Legacy of the Void unit, where I thought, we've never even seen a unit that moves like this. But I think what you want to have is you want to have a kind of characteristic about the race. Like with Protoss, you've got the pylons, you've got the energy, you've got the shields, but everything's more expensive, and I think they did a good job building on that in StarCraft 2 by having the warp-ins, kind of made it even more Protoss-like. Zerg, obviously, it was the kind of the opposite in a lot of ways. It was fast and weak, but it could grow and soak up the map. And then in StarCraft 2, they kind of did an even better job by expanding on that idea by having creep that could move around. And I feel like there was a period in Stormgate for me that I thought was the most fun when I was playing, and that's when the Infernals came out. And they had that infest mechanic that would start out on the Gaunt. And I thought that was so crazy, and it was so interesting to kind of play with it, and it seems like they dialed it back. And then when Celestial came out, Celestial was a race I couldn't figure out how to do that much with right away. It wasn't obvious to me. It almost seemed like too complex, or it wasn't, there just wasn't a lot of obvious things I could do. But if they can figure out how to make each of these races fun and crazy, and that might scare some new players, but it can make for some really interesting games. And a lot of times when I talk to RTS developers, and I'm not talking even about just Stormgate here, but in general, they're always very concerned about new players. But you got to remember, even when you were a new player way back in StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2, you had crazy games, even at bad levels. And I think if you can offer kind of crazy, unique scenarios, I think you can have a lot of fun. And the final thing is, I still don't understand the role of creeps in Stormgate. I'm not anti-creep. I really am like creep agnostic. But when I play the game as someone who I would say I can hang in an RTS game, it's not obvious to me. Do I want to be expanding or do I want to be creeping? Like, like in some of these maps, there's like creeps, a speed camp in the corner of the map, and I go, should I be attacking that? I don't, like in Warcraft 3, because there's items, it's obvious to me that I have to do that. So, I really like these updates. I'm going to be curious to see what the next iteration of the game is, and we'll see what happens. I'm rooting for these guys. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and you're always welcome to join me on my Twitch stream. It's Tasteless TV on Twitch, where I record these live. In another video that's on my YouTube, we just announced SSL, so I'm excited to start casting that for you guys soon. Have a good one. I hope to see you in a future video. Bye-bye.